Good afternoon. My name is Schier, and I'm in grade 11 at Busan Foreign School. When asked if I were interested in speaking on the topic of happiness, my initial reaction was no, thank you. However, fortunately or unfortunately, I'm still not quite sure. My mum was quick to agree on my behalf, and without consulting me, and she said, no, you're doing this. Of course, it's an absolute honor and my pleasure to be speaking here today, but I'll be honest, even though I knew I'd have to sit down and write a presentation and write a speech, I put it off for as long as possible until asked the question, what do you think of when you hear the word happiness? And then I realized exactly why I was struggling so much with this presentation and why I found it so daunting. Happiness is not a narrow topic. On the contrary, it's an incredibly overwhelming subject and incredibly complex too. Happiness is so relative. It's influenced by an array of various internal and external factors. I don't believe it's something that can really be described or defined in just a few words. Personally, I view happiness as a very internal feeling that is influenced by external factors. Happiness isn't just the joy we find in the everyday, but a deeper sense of trust and comfort that comes from within, that enables our resilience and emotional endurance. It is the underlying foundation of our well-being. Something that is more evident than ever is the extent to which external events can impact us. At the beginning of the year, I was in Sydney, where the sky was orange from the bushfires and the smoke. COVID-19 was declared an international global health emergency in January by the World Health Organization and first labeled as a pandemic in March. So many other heartbreaking things have happened this year since. The murder of George Floyd, the explosion in the port in Beirut, the plane crash in Ukraine. 2020, as we progress into the future, will, I'm sure, be notorious for being the new annus horribilis, a year we'd very much like to learn from to ensure it does not repeat itself again. As a result of the tumultuous events of the last 11.5 months, people's happiness has undoubtedly been impacted on an incredibly deep level. A global pandemic is not something one anticipates to experience during their lifetime, and it's undeniable that lockdown in particular has had its repercussions on people's mental health, not just because their social freedoms were limited, but because of the anxiety they felt for family members and friends too. I'm no stranger to these feelings. I've personally spent a total of 6 weeks in self-isolation this year due to COVID-19. 2 weeks in February, 2 weeks in August when I first arrived in Busan before the beginning of my junior year, and 2 weeks more recently. That's a month and a half with limited human contact, and I know other people have had it much worse and have had to endure much longer periods of self-isolation too. So the question I'm asking myself today, the question I'm asking anyone who may be watching or listening, is how can we develop an internal sense of safety and reassurance? How do we strengthen this foundation to ensure our well-being and maintain this internal equilibrium? Because even during isolation, even when I had days of feeling lonely or disconnected from my friends and family, I could still rely on this underlying sense of security. The knowledge that even if I'm overwhelmed right now, I'm still okay. The knowledge that I need to focus on the big picture and not every passing mood. Because what I believe happiness is the root feeling we can always come back to for reassurance and for comfort. One thing stands out to me in particular when I compare my experiences in isolation in August versus November, and that is a sense of community. The November isolation period was much easier to endure, to the point where I had minimum anxiety and honestly didn't even realize that 2 weeks had passed. And the difference is that in August, I hadn't yet started my junior year at my new school. I hadn't yet developed the friendships and relationships that I now maintain. During those 2 weeks, it was a period of isolation in every sense of the word. I had my mother and my sister, and we are an incredibly close family, but I missed the feeling that I was part of a larger community that could offer support and guidance, that could offer us a sense of stability and calm. I didn't have much to reassure myself with because I did feel quite alone. When self-isolating in November, however, the 2 weeks flew by. By November, I hadn't just started at my new school, but I had developed so many valuable relationships amongst the wider school community. I'm a member of the student council. I'm an embarrassingly bad member of the volleyball team, but I still had my weekly training sessions and shared common ground with the other players. I had Model United Nations, classes with friends and teachers, and classroom environments that were supportive and generous in spirit. So when I entered the second period of isolation, at the same time as my school closed campus and made the decision to progress via virtual learning, I had daily Zooms. I had teachers email me to check in and offer encouragement. Every member of student council filmed themselves, and the videos were compiled into one long message of support for the wider school community. So when I talk about happiness as an internal state of comfort, I personally draw on these experiences of love and support to maintain it. I have a sense of inner reassurance, and when I do feel anxious or overwhelmed, I can reflect on these positive experiences. Unfortunately, due to the rising COVID cases in Busan, my school remained closed, and we recently began winter break. Assuming we can return to campus in January, it will have been 6 weeks since I've been immersed in my community. But in all honesty, I'm not particularly worried. Teachers have told us that should we need anything, we can just send an email. I have my family and my friends to message, and I spent 3 hours last week talking the ear of my best friend back in Australia. Overall, I feel secure knowing that despite the magnitude of our global situation, not one single person is truly alone. 2020 has been a difficult year for everyone. We've all been impacted by the year's wide range of occurrences. For example, I vividly remember opening my phone and seeing messages from my friends in Australia who could see the Australian wildfires from their bedroom windows. I remember obsessively Googling Meghan and Harry's exit from the royal family, and I remember walking through my school hallways and hearing people argue over the US election. And I remember the feeling of dread when I opened KakaoTalk and saw that a friend I had been in contact with tested positive, and that awful sinking feeling I had of what if. But ironically, despite all of this, 2020 has been a significant reminder of the value of happiness, community, gratitude, and support. A reminder that we thrive when we're offered support by the people around us and should strive to do the same. A reminder that even when we're struggling and facing immense uncertainty and an unpredictable future, we can draw on these feelings of and memories of comfort and validation to maintain inner reassurance, to know that actually we are okay. Thank you.